Okay, so we have the next governor sitting right here. Yeah. Doesn't know, this is Dan Cox. He's a state delegate, husband and father, Republican conservative candidate for the governor of the state of Maryland. And Dan believes in the goodness of God for the people of all our state. He has been a leading force fighting for lives and livelihoods of all Marylanders. He's a lifelong Marylander. Dan has served the people of Maryland as a small businessman, 15 years as a constitutional attorney, state delegate, representing one of the largest districts of Maryland, Frederick and Carroll County. We're not in that district here. Close, but not in it, right? Yeah, very close, but not in. He has over 130 constituents. Dan's platform, he's enforced the Constitution, our First and Second Amendments, all of the Bill of Rights, and the overreaching mandates, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. Provides parents with educational choice, strength through parental rights, and the divisive CRT, which Doreen talked about, Dee talked about. We're having another forum end of the month about that. And Dan believes, of course, reducing taxes, fees, and regulations. In other words, a Republican is what it boils down to, right? Okay. This is not part of my notes, but this is not a fundraiser per se. It wasn't meant to be. But after you hear Dan talk, I'm sure a lot of you are going to want to open up your wallets and your checkbooks, because you can't win without some money. And I believe Dan has got some of his people here, so they'll be more than happy to take your donations after anything. Okay? Let me turn it over. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Cox.
Thank you to you both, and thank you to everyone here tonight. It's really an honor to be here in Montgomery County on behalf of freedom. How many people are excited about what happened in Virginia just a couple weeks back? Yeah. Are there any parents and mama bears here tonight? So you feel free to get my Parents for Dan Cox sign as you leave. If we run out, we've got more. I have been privileged to serve in the House of Delegates, and this is my fourth session coming up. I was elected, privileged to be elected for Frederick and Carroll County. Had an opportunity to run for Congress before that here in Montgomery County. Been on the ballot 4 times here. Really? And I had an opportunity to debate the gentleman named Jamie Raskin. You might have heard of him. So he's my congressman. I guess he's most of your congressmen. And in that process, I learned that freedom is truly under attack. When you hear about pallets of cash being sent over to our enemies, when you hear about, in particular, the election manipulation going on, where in that race, for instance, Jamie Raskin wanted to open up voting to, and he still does, to anyone present, regardless of status, of legal status. So that wipes away our ability to be a citizen and have a voice, and it wipes away the law. And fast forward to where we are today, as a father, as a husband, 9 children. My wife and I have been married 25 years. I've had a small business for 16 years. I've worked in politics really since my grandmother took me along at age 5 to help drop pamphlets at houses, because she was a vice chair of the Baltimore County Republican Club, and also in our Central Committee, and then the Women's Club there. And I've got it in my blood that, there's something called the parent's rights to raise the child the way God intended. My dad raised us to love God, love our neighbors, and to do what is right, and to take responsibility for ourselves. And one of the things that he did was expand private education and homeschooling in Maryland. So in 1983, the superintendent, who would have thought that would be a thing today, right? Now it's the one thing rescuing a lot of people who want to make their own way in terms of their own medical choices. But my dad was a pioneer in that area, and He's also a pastor. So he launched a school, and as part of the school, he had a homeschool program. And one of the things the state superintendent of schools in Maryland did was called him up and said, if you don't shut your school down, your church school, we're going to arrest you for violating education law. And of course, my father, being a very strong-willed German Kansan, transplanted to Maryland, said, well, you know, sir, the last time I checked, these were our kids. Now, when you decide to have a baby and change its diapers and feed it and raise it and direct its education, then maybe you can decide how that child should be educated. But as for us, we're going to have a school, and we're going to make sure it's professional, and we're going to educate our own kids. And then he hired a really good lawyer. And the rest is history. Now there's close to 30,000 home educators in Maryland. It's a growing movement. And then also the private school movement. He was a part-time lobbyist with a private school. He helped found several different home education groups, and also was working with Maryland Association of Christian Schools. So he was very involved in Annapolis. Took me down there quite a bit. I learned the ropes of Annapolis since I was young. And one of the things I learned was that you have to make your voices known to be heard, and it can make a difference. Fast forward to today, I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, I was fighting a vaccine mandate in the Maryland legislature where they were going to remove the religious exemption. This was pre-COVID. Well, the bill went up before the Senate, and I'm proud and privileged to be endorsed, by the way, by Informed Choice of Maryland. Any Informed Choicers here today? They're a great group. I recommend getting involved with them. But they called them up, and I called up their leadership, and I said, there's this bill, and they had heard about it. They were tracking it. So they decided to do an email blitz as well as an outreach to the Senate committee, because it had come from the House and went over to the Senate. I believe that was the current status. And within a day or 48 hours, they had over 1,000 people contact the vice chair of the Senate. And she comes up to me the next day and she says, call your people off. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, I've got over 1,000 emails to tell us that this bill, that, you know, they don't like this bill that's going to require vaccination in schools and by removing the religious exemption of children. And I think also it was going to tighten up the medical exemption. So I said, well, actually, that's not me. That's real people, real moms and dads. They heard what you're doing, and they want you to withdraw the bill. Well, she said, well, guess what? It's done. The bill's dead. We're withdrawing the bill. And I learned something again. It was a great reminder that if you make your voices heard, and if you are real, you're professional, and you assert the truth, that a lot of times our elected officials will listen. Because at the end of the day, they care about the fact that if X number of people from their jurisdiction makes their voices known, all of a sudden they realize if they're not careful, they will incite a movement against their reelection. And that's the way elections are intended to work, right? And we've seen that now in the COVID situation, the lockdowns. A lot of the courts have deferred to the legislatures, saying, well, if your elected representative goes along with it, why should we interfere? And so all the more we need to make our voices known, and that is why my wife and I got on our knees and said, you know, yes, I have a safe seat. Yes, I won with 63% of the vote and probably doing well for re-election. But if not us now, if not us who, if not now, when? As Ronald Reagan said. And that's because we have to stand up at a time when it is front and center. Right now, as you know, there are mandates coming down and in place like never before. And those mandates are destroying people's lives. I just had a whistleblower call me today and say that a friend of her son, 13-year-old, in Frederick County, I won't name the school, dropped dead on the basketball court. Wow. 3 days after he received the vaccine. And the worst part of it is they've covered it up. and they have it under a gag rule. Now, I personally have been attacked professionally. I'm currently under attack professionally. There's a gag order on some of that, but we're winning. I've got good lawyers and a bigger God. But the intimidation is not something that you want to bow the knee to. This is our freedom. This is our body. These are our bodies. These are our kids. How dare someone say that they can take a hold of our own bodies and jam something in it that we don't even know what's in it, or that we haven't consented to. You know, informed consent is a beautiful thing. It says that not only do you have the right to know what it is that you're receiving medically, but you have the right as a sovereign and as an American citizen to say, you know what, I just don't want it. That's called consent. And people go berserk right now saying, well, wait, how dare you? Don't you want the vax? Look, if you want the vax, fine. But don't force it on us. And that's part of this whole medical freedom issue. And that's why when I'm saying I'm going to restore freedom, I mean it. Not only am I pledging to you to restore freedom on day one by restoring the Constitution to each one of us individually, but I'm pledging that if any executive officer or government official in Maryland violates your constitutional rights, I'm implementing the DeSantis rule that says they're the ones that are going to get fined, not the people. You know, when I first started to run, some of the Republicans on the inside said, you know, you're taking a risk because these issues are going to be gone by the time the election rolls around. And I said, first of all, I don't care because the issues are now and we have to speak up now. And if they're gone and the people forget about me, at least I spoke up for my own kids. Number two, I saw the information coming and I didn't think it was going away, and sure enough, what are we looking at now? It just gets worse and worse every day. We had a Fifth Circuit court coming down that I can't wait to hear Jennifer Lester talk about. And what did the President of the United States, alleged, say to the cameras? I couldn't believe it. Are we an American society under the rule of law? He said, ignore it. For crying out loud, this is the federal court of America with a nationwide injunction. It reminded me of my reason for going to law school, and that was I saw a lot of a need for attorneys who actually upheld the Constitution in practical ways, not just in big national cases, but in everyday people's lives. And that was because my parents taught me and had me read things like Lex Rex. How many people have heard of the old principles? June 15th, 1215, we had the Magna Carta signed on the hill, on the fields of Runnymede. Have you heard that story? It gave us the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, which gave us things like, as citizens, the right to a jury trial. Okay, you know, most of the world doesn't have that right. You go to France, you don't have a right to a jury. But in England, in America, our heritage is you have a right to a jury trial. And some of those issues dated because of the way the kings are misusing the law, because what was taught then was Rex Lex. The king is the law. And our forefathers flipped it around and said, no, 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 we're done with that. Lex Rex, the law is the king. No one is above the law. That's our American heritage, and that's what I intend to restore right here in Maryland. Because that is going to bring a path of freedom for us. And that applies. Do you know right now, there's, for instance, in the CRT issue, the education code requires teaching of American exceptionalism, American independence, American patriotism, the flag, the national anthem. It's in the education code. How many schools are actually teaching this? In fact, they're teaching the opposite. That's why I'm so privileged that the running mate that we have for Lieutenant Governor, Jordana Schiffinelli, she and her husband took on the Queen Anne's County Board of Education when they were pulling their children out to march in rallies to burn, to encourage even the burning of police cars. I mean, it was beyond the pale of what was being taught. It was not about equality, it was about equity and retribution and riot. That was what was being taught to these kids. She said, enough is enough, we're not going to do this. Not on my watch, not with my kids. She and her husband did a write-in campaign because the election filing deadlines had passed, so they did a write-in campaign. They were told, no. How many times do people win on a write-in campaign? Never. 14,000 write-in votes later, they took over the Board of Education and changed history for Freeman's County. That's a proven winner. That's somebody just like you who spoke up and did something and would not stop until they won. And that's what we're going to do in this race. The issues are too important for us. If we lose on the issues, we are going to lose basic principles for generations to come. We cannot let that happen. When you look at these mandates, I think the issues that I've been asked to mention is, well, what do we do from here? What are some of the options? Well, in my law practice, I'm doing my level best to help some friends, but I refer a lot to people who are experts like Jennifer Lester. I'll defer to some of that. So this is not a legal advice statement, but the time has come, in my opinion, to defy and to file your civil rights complaints against anyone who would denounce or trounce your religious freedom. And I don't even think that we should have to file. Now, thankfully, you can file a religious freedom exemption. But why would you have to do that if the risk of the vax is a potential for death? Okay, so they're going to risk you with death when if you're under the age of 60, it's a 0.9997 chance, likelihood, not chance, likelihood that you'll survive COVID. So even if it wasn't that good of a chance, this should be a choice. Our medical freedoms are at stake. They claim a lot of times, you hear this, that they're not forcing this on us. They just take everything away from you until you bow the knee. That's why the Nuremberg Code was very clear, and it says force or coercion, right? Many of you know about that code. It's published on the NIH website. It's published on the FDA website. Our experts are required to follow it. Our boys are buried in Normandy right now, having established it in World War II. And I will not back down from defending our human rights. This is a major issue. We cannot ever back down from it. So let me paint some hope here. Where's the hope in blue, deep blue Maryland? Okay, here's the hope. It's no longer a right and left issue. This is an issue of freedom that expands all parties and all people. Everyone appreciates freedom. Anyone who says, go ahead and kill me, or risk my death because I don't care, you're bigger than me, is lying to you. The natural response to someone trying to force someone, the natural right that we have, is to say no. And we have that enshrined in our Constitution, and it's something that we can apply because the Constitution, which I carry with me, oops, that's my card. By the way, you can get my cards. There's a nice little donation link. The Constitution doesn't just execute itself. It doesn't apply itself. It doesn't happen on its own. It's there as a tool for each one of us to use to enforce and protect our rights and those of our families and others. We have to do it. It's time we have to do it. That's why I think, and I've heard, this is, again, educational advice, not legal, but I've heard many people in Pennsylvania, thousands in Pennsylvania are fighting the mandates by filing civil rights actions. Now, in my employment law experience, it's a process. You should get an attorney. You should look up, try to find an employment attorney to help you. But it's time we fight. It's time you stand up. Don't just acquiesce. Don't just walk away. This land is your land. This land is my land. That's the path forward. And this is America, and this is Maryland. And what does Maryland have as a heritage? The Free State, the national anthem, the history of being the middle temperament that says we're going to find a path forward for everyone under the Constitution and law. Now, my opponent, you may have heard, has just this week come out and said, she said, well, I'm against mandates too, so there's no difference between me and Dan. Well, I beg to differ, and I'm telling you this only because this is a primary. And a primary under law, election code, I think it's 5701, is desired by the parties for one reason, to expose the differences between the candidates. So here's the difference. I have fought for years. 2 years ago, I fought against CRT. 2 years ago, I began fighting against the overreach with the vax. Last year, I fought and helped kill HB 650, which was to seize private property during an emergency. I actually voted for that bill because it had Governor Hogan's name on it, and I thought it must be good, until I got to page 10, because you have to read very fast when you get all these 3,000 bills coming at you on the House floor. So I'm reading through, and everybody's voting green. I'm like, well, I guess I should be green, Governor Hogan. And I got to page 10, and it said, in a potential emergency, the governor can seize your private property without remuneration. Get that word out right. So I jumped up and said, Madam Speaker, I'm a red on the board. Please change my vote. I could not believe it. So then we went to work, and listen to this. We did a video, 10,000 views later. I got a call from the governor's office. He said, if you take, his staff, if you take the video down, we will pull the bill from the Senate committee. I said, deal. And they pulled the bill, and it did not pass. That was before COVID. HB 650, pre-COVID. That's the path forward, and here is the hope for each one of us. We have hope in ourselves and in God Almighty. The fourth stanza of the national anthem says, and thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may our heaven-rescued land praise the power that has made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and may this be our motto. In God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. And this is why I'm running. The difference between my opponent and myself is stark. I have fought these things from day one. I've stood for you. I've fought with every grace that I could. It's been hard at times, I'll be honest. I've been smeared. I was on the House floor fighting for children. They were changing the law last year to allow children to be advised for chemical sex change operations at age 12 behind their parents' backs, okay? I don't care what side of the fence you're on any of that issue. You don't go behind parents' backs ever, period. That's why we have parents. And I stood up on the House floor and fought for that, and I got vilified. My opponent doesn't show up for those things. For instance, on the issue of the vax mandate, she says now that she's against him. But on her Facebook page, she said that Governor Hogan's order to the state healthcare workers to get the vaccine or lose your job, the jab or the job, or she called it a reasonable choice to get swabbed in your nose twice a week and have basically a vaccine passport. That's unacceptable. This is our American freedom at stake. I have stood against that from day one. I stood against the mask mandate. I was vilified for that. I said, no, hold on a second. These masks, first of all, are scientifically questionable by every doctor I've read. They're okay maybe for bacterial droplets, but not viral. It's common sense, it's clear science. But regardless, this is a precursor when you force it to a forced vaccine passport. And you know what? I was told that you're nuts, you're conspiracy theorists. Here we are, folks, QR codes, okay? And my opponent stood up and said, wear the damn mask. Okay? I'm telling you this because I'm exposing the lies. That's the way the light shines. It's the only way the light can shine. And there's a lot of money behind this 20 months of fight that we've been in. Has a huge amount of international money. A very large part of it comes from the pharmaceutical industry, which, by the way, I have nothing against, generally. I don't like it when they've experimented, of course. I think that's crimes against humanity. But there are obviously great things that have been done in saving people's lives. I actually did my dissertation in law school on the benefits of, the historical benefits of ethical vaccines, okay? And the 14th Amendment and the rights that we have to not be forced it was called forced vaccination. Can you believe that? 2003, 2004 or whatever, I did a paper on that, never knowing that this would come. And the issue is therefore in front and center of you. The government may not force this. My opponent has done that. She stood with our governor to do that. She stood with the Biden mandates. Since when has anyone in power in Maryland said anything in opposition to what Biden is doing, other than maybe on CNN once in a while? Oh, yeah, no. And while they say that, you know what they're doing in the back room? The health department of Maryland right now is encouraging the coercion of our children for vaccination on this experimental vaccine. And everyone knows, every expert that I have talked with knows that this is an experiment on kids. It is not good. It needs to be opposed. Any kind of governmental coercion like that is wrong. And so that's what I pledge to you. I don't mean to belabor my little speech, but I'm here to take questions too, hopefully at the end. We've got some great speakers coming up. I'm asking for your vote. Let me tell you something. We are up against the deadline. The deadline is December 31st for me because the Democrats want to shut down my fundraising during session. Okay. Apparently my opponent gets to fundraise, I'm told, but not me, even though she's dealing out millions of dollars with the Commerce Department. Somehow me, just piddly me, with a vote, could be bought. So, all right, fine, I'm turning off on my fundraising on January 12th. I need your help. It's a race for reality, for all of us. So if you can do what you can by December 31st, that's my hard and fast. And I've got some very exciting people waiting in the wings to see if I hit those numbers. So thanks so much. God bless you. TalksForFreedom.com. TalksForFreedom.com. Thank you.